The world unfolds differently for each of us. Why? Where do the rules come from? Within each of us, there is a unique philosophy shaping our thoughts, beliefs, feelings, worldviews, and actions. This is Inner Dialogues with Ejam, an introspective space for curious souls and minds. This is where you get to understand your individual philosophy that writes the script of your life. This is where we unveil the inner wisdom that guides you. Yep, that was your inner sage knocking the door. Let's go and chat with him. Hi, it's Ejam. Welcome back to Inner Dialogues with me. Today I want to follow up on a conversation I found myself in with myself during the weekend. I was reading John Mayer's interview with Shawn Mendes on Interview magazine. I'm gonna link it in the description as always, all the things that I'm gonna talk about. And it took me to the places that I found myself curious to discover. This is how I vocalized my feelings at that time on Instagram stories. There were some themes in that interview that spoke to me, and I wrote them down and journal about them a bit as I was reading the interview. To be honest, I wanted to get prepared for this episode, but the themes, I couldn't find the golden thread between the themes that spoke out to me. So I decided to create a mind map with these three, I'm pretty sure 3 or maybe 4 themes in this interview, and they were quite the central topics. I just love the vibe now. The sun hid behind the clouds and it got like gloomy and it's perfect. I think it's about to rain as well. Anyway, as I was saying, before I distracted myself, these 3 topics, themes, I guess they spoke to me because they are some central topics of my life nowadays. And I want to go through them one by one, and as I speak and as I intellectualize about them, maybe I'll be able to find the golden thread between them. Shall we start? The first theme was being available all the time. I'm gonna quote the exact piece that inspired me to discover this concept. Shawn Mendes was talking about how he is a lot more secure in who he is and how good it feels to put something out that's going to portray him like that way, referring to his upcoming album. He said, quote, "I have a lot of acceptance and patience for my humanity, but at the same time, I really want to exist in a more authentic way," end quote. That made me stop. That made me think for a second. Acceptance and patience for my humanity and wanting to exist more authentically. As social creatures, right, we tend to thrive in conditions where our preferences are supported and our personality is not in a threat. It creates a big existential threat when our choices are not seen acceptable by the group we are part of. That's why it requires so much stamina to go against the tide. To say that this is what I think and this is what I prefer, although it go against the norm. So that is the part of wanting to exist more authentically, by staying true to our feelings and our opinions and vocalize them and take life decisions supporting them. So that is one part. But when we put the acceptance and patience for our humanity into that equation, it creates a bit more, I don't know how to say it, a bit more kind way to treat who we are. Because we want to be accepted, we want to be whole and feel safe in that group, in our family, within our friends, within the job environment, within the culture we live in. We want to be held by them. And sometimes it comes with the consequence of, so to say, grinding down our opinions, our stances, in order to conform and fit into the society, into the group that we are in. And I think this is a constant equilibrium between our need to conform and wanting to find our individuality. It's a constant equilibrium between practice and acceptance and patience for our humanity and wanting to exist more authentically. When Shawn Mendes vocalizes his thought about his feeling about wanting to exist in a more authentic way, John Mayer says that you reminded me of that idea of, quote, I want to be in this world, but I don't want this world to subsume and become me, end quote. And Shawn Mendes replies with the following words, which made this portion of the conversation for me a theme of being available all the time. So he says, quote, it's like I don't want this world to be dictating when I'm on or off, end quote. It was, so this specific part from the interview was one of the things that I immediately shared on my Instagram stories, saying that, well, this resonates with me so much because I don't want to be always available, reachable to calls or texts. Most of the time I've caught myself many times fighting with this concept of being available. But lately, thanks to a question that one of my friends asked me recently, I discovered that I'm feeling much more at ease with not being available all the time. And this came with my intentional decision of limiting stimuli. If you have read the Philos episode, the weekly email newsletter that I sent a couple of weeks ago, probably, it was about me stopping reading books. And my friend asked me a couple of days ago, actually, she asked me, how's it going on? You're still fasting? And I was like, I think I'm still fasting. I'm still not reading books, I said to her. And she asked me, have you realized any changes in your life when you implemented this fast into your life? And I said to her, you know what? It changed many things in my life. And it wasn't just like, oh, I stopped reading books. It wasn't just that. But for me, conscious consumption was the theme, was the intention behind this practice. And it wasn't just not reading books, but it was being more mindful of my media consumption, my audio consumption, my interactions with people. And I mentioned more tangible things that I implemented in that newsletter. But when she asked me that, I was like, you know what? I think I'm more comfortable with this idea of, oh, I have to reply back now. I have to take that call. I have to reply back to that message right now as I just receive it, because I don't want other people to be waited, or I don't want to miss out on things. And I was like, there we go. Fear of missing out. I was getting FOMO. Previously, I was getting FOMO about, oh, if I don't reply now, I'm gonna miss out on something. And that created that unease. But later on, when I was feeling much more at ease with that FOMO, oh, okay, there's nothing that I miss out. Everything come on its own time. Then it created this feeling of unclosed tab in my mind. You know, when in our laptop or in our computers, when we have a lot of tabs that are open and your computer starts to lag, that kind of a feeling, it creates the start in my mind. Like when I have messages that are unreplied on my notification center, or, you know, the amount of notifications you have, it shows up next to the related app, right? It created that, oh my God, I have things to reply. So it was at the back of my mind, but it created that unclosed tab feeling. And I recently learned that it's a common issue in a group coaching program, another call, that this takes space from our capacity. This fills out our capacity in how we function. So when we have capacity, we can function, we can create, we can exist authentically. Back to that point, right? But this unclosed tab feeling, not replying to messages, it was creating this extra space in my capacity, which led me to, okay, let me just reply to it now so that it doesn't disturb my mind. So it was first FOMO, it was first fear of missing out, and then this unclosed tab feeling in my mind. But now I don't have it. I even if I see a message, I don't reply if I don't feel like it. It's not like I'm going to reply late to you. It's not that. It's just, if I don't feel like it, if I don't feel like I'm going to give my 100% or 80%, whatever I want to give to that person at that moment, if I don't feel like I'm able to give that to that person at that moment, I'm not going to give it. Because it doesn't do justice to myself and to them as well. That's what I came to realize recently. And that gave me such a relief in not replying to messages, not replying to calls. Well, I don't receive many calls, but not replying to messages in general. And the other thing that my friend made me realize when she asked me that question, like, what are the things that happen since you stop reading books and, you know, conscious consumption practice, I said to her, I'm using do not disturb mode on my phone, which I also used previously. So if you're an iPhone user, there is this function on your focus. There is this focus function on our phones, which is like sleep mode. There is personal mode, and you can customize it on your own needs. So I have the do not disturb mode, which allows calls, but no notification pops up on your screen. So you don't see anything. So what I recently caught myself doing is that even if I'm cooking sometimes, I recently did it. It was, I think, yesterday. I was cooking and I was checking out a recipe that I was cooking from, and messages started to pop up from WhatsApp, and I was like, no. I'm start to get foggy minded, confused at that moment. So I was like, oh, do not disturb mode on, confusion off, literally. And like cooking doesn't take a lot of my attention, But if it's a new recipe, sometimes it does, and it's normal. And I just turned on the do not disturb mode. I can do that 15 minutes later, or when I feel like ready to reply back. And the other thing that I also realized with this conscious consumption phase in my life is posting on social media whenever I feel like it. And this sounded very cheesy. It started to sound very cheesy for me, because follow your intuition, or whenever do things whenever you feel like it. It didn't really give me a route to follow. So I had to surrender to unknown, basically, to go with my intuition, to go with doing that thing whenever I feel like it. I had to surrender to the unknown. Well, whenever I surrender to the unknown, whenever we surrender to the unknown, I think it creates this vast opportunities in our lives. And this is what happened in my life as well. I recently heard a couple of opinions, feedbacks from friends and previous clients on how different my use of social media has become recently. They told me that you started to show up more authentically. I started to feel your energy, your real life energy, so to say, on social media. It feels so welcoming, it feels so inviting and authentic, and it feels so you. And I was like, hearing this, it was such a long way, and it's still a way. Like I still have a way to go, but I really love showing up on social media nowadays for the last 2 months. But especially for the last couple of weeks, like so showing on stories especially, and creating videos based on how I feel is what drive the interaction, is what drive the drive response from people. And I feel like this was a result of this process of conscious consumption, because I was able to tune in with myself, like what are the things that I have on my plate right now, instead of constantly taking in audio programs, podcasts, YouTube videos, movies, books, this, that. There was this constant intake of information, which made everything foggier inside of my brain. So once I put a curtain between the outer world and incoming information, I was able to settle my opinions down, settle the things that I want to do, and at the end of the day, showing up in the ways that I want to show up on social media, on text, on calls, on real life interactions. So when I read this passage, this excerpt from the interview, I want to be in this world, but I don't want this world to subsume and become me. I don't want this world to be dictating when I'm on or off. I was like, yes, I can finally breathe with this idea of I don't have to be available all the time. And if I want to be available all the time, it's fine as well. I can be whenever I want to be. But it's just that I wasn't getting any FOMO. I wasn't getting any unclosed tab feeling. I was just, I'm going to reply back. I'm going to reach out to you whenever I feel like it. So yeah, that was that. That was one of the themes that spoke out to me from that interview. It feels right. It feels very nice to to vocalize and further discover this area in my life and share it with you. And the other theme, the second theme that spoke out to me from that interview was this idea of home, feeling at home. And I think it will take us back to this theme of being available all the time. This is how I feel like it. So I'm pretty sure we'll find the golden thread between them. But how this conversation about feeling at home started was John Mayer asked Shawn Mendes, what percentage of time do you spend at home? And what percentage of time do you spend traveling, etc.? And Shawn Mendes replies with this words, quote, even the question of home is something I think about all the time. What is home and when do I feel like it? And John Mayer asks this follow-up question, how do you take that state of mind with you? And Shawn Mendes replies, quote, wherever you go, there you are. Home ultimately is you. It's the way you carry yourself when you're alone, and it's the way you carry yourself around people. And he further shares the practices that creates this home feeling within him. For me, he says, it's making sure I make my bed and light a candle in the evening. I'm ultimately in control of whether home is a feeling I get to experience or not. End quote. When I heard that, I was like, of course that is the case. Of course that is it. When I don't feel like I don't belong in a place or with a person, with a group of people I'm with, that means I'm not home. The way I carry myself in that moment does not align, does not feel safe with my surroundings. And that puts me out of home. So it's not about, again, like reading life. This was a topic, very common topic that I mentioned a couple of times in the first season. Reading life, not from outside to inside, but from inside to outside. So it's not that the environment, the people that I'm with puts me out of home, but it is, I don't feel at home in myself to invite people over my home, over my inner space. I need to feel at home within myself first. And I loved how he said, I'm ultimately in control of whether home is a feeling I get to experience or not. The practices are routines, right? They are the things that roots us down wherever we go. So I asked myself in that moment when I read the interview, what are the practices that creates this feeling of at home in me, that grounds me down, roots me down? What are those practices? And I would encourage you also to find and become aware of those practices, so that when you're out of alignment, when we are out of alignment, when there's a major change in our outer environment, we can just tap into this at home feeling within us at the end of the day. So yeah, and this made me think of traveling, yes, in on one side, but also when I started to live in Copenhagen for my Erasmus year, for the first month was very challenging. It was very hard being away from home, being away from what feels like home. And I thought, and I think at that time I discovered what home meant to me. It was a deep sense of belonging I created in myself at the end of first month that which rooted me down in that city. It was very interesting because after a couple of months before I went back to my country, before I returned back to my country for Christmas, I was like, when I came here to the house, to the technically the home that I grew up in, I felt not at home. I felt like no, this is too much. This doesn't feel safe. This not safe, but this doesn't feel aligned with who I want to be and who I am in that moment, because I was so used to having my own space, first things first, but I was so used to having my own routines, the times that I have certain things and the feelings I had all throughout those months when I was feeling at home in myself, within myself, but in a different environment back in Copenhagen. So it wasn't about a physical environment at all. This physical environment definitely supports whether you feel at home, whether you feel aligned and supported. But at the end of the day, it's not about the environment that we are in, that which creates that home feeling. It's all about finding home within in every environment that we go to, and it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice when it comes to nowadays popular term mindfulness, right? As much as we are mindful of our own inner fauna, our own inner environment, we tend to become pure witnesses to the outer environment. But more than that, this idea of home, feeling at home within ourselves, finding home is ultimately you theme. It reminds me of this, when sometimes when we meet with some people for the first time ever, we tap into this very safe feeling, I want to say, like, oh, I feel like I know you for a lifetime, or I feel like I know you from somewhere. I feel like we met before. That feeling of we knew each other from somewhere, And I feel like these occasions happen, and thankfully they happen. And I recently had one occasion where I was like, this feeling that I get from this people feels very at home, feels very similar, feels very familiar, not similar, but familiar. I feel like as we tap into our authentic ways more, so that's constant equilibrium between acceptance to our human nature, which can go to the lines of conformity, and the other side of the equilibrium, wanting to live more authentically. So when we find the sweet spot between this equilibrium, we stick to our own paths when we choose to live authentically. And when we choose to live authentically, it creates this feeling of I'm at home. Wherever I go, whatever I do, there is this thing that is not a subject to any change. That is our core, maybe. That is our inner sage, as how I welcome you in this podcast space every time in the intro. That inner sage, that core essence of ours, depicts itself in every interaction we have with others. So it feels like when we tap into our authenticity more, when we tap into this feeling at home feeling more and more, we tend to welcome people into our own lives that feels home to us, that they feel familiar to us because they remind us the home we have within us. And I realized that for the last 2 minutes, I don't know, I lost the count, I was just keeping my eyes closed because this at home feeling that I have with me, that I carry with me everywhere I go, it feels very personal. It feels very individual. So I don't know, maybe that's why I wanted to close my eyes. And I feel like now that I realize, one more thing that I realized was that I think that was the golden thread. Authenticity, sticking to that authenticity, that desire to live a more authentic life, cultivates the feeling of at home. Or they are, I think, even more than that, they are symbiotic. They are fed from each other. They feed each other. And I think this can take us to our last theme of this interview, which is suffocating good things. And that theme spoke out to me because of this experience that I mentioned you about, meeting a person for the first time, but feeling like you know them before. And I said I had a one occasion like that very recently in one of my best friend's wedding this summer, towards the end of this summer. I didn't know that girl. I didn't know her, but something about her, something about me drew each other. Like it was like a magnet that we came close to each other. And when I read this part of the interview about suffocating good things in our lives, it reminded me of that new flourishing friendship with that girl that I recently met. But before I want to mention my take on that friendship, I want to mention this. I want to quote you this portion of the interview. So John Mayer asks Shawn Mendes, quote, "Are you currently sharing space between your journey and being there for someone else, or are you just leaving that room?" And Shawn Mendes says, "The room's open. Right now, I'm trying to not over-romanticize every single thing. If there's a good thing, I'm going to let it be a good thing and not suffocate it." I was like, Yeah, we have this tendency to latch onto things in our life that feels good, that feels at home, right? That theme again. When this feeling of feeling at home is nurtured from an environment, from a person that we are with, that we are in, we want that feeling, that environment, that person to be a constant thing in our lives. So we latch on it. When we feel good in something, we latch on it, and that suffocates. That suffocates the relationship. That suffocates the relationship you have with that particular thing or environment. And how it goes back to this new friend I want to call, that new friend that I have in my life, is she's such a special soul. And in this loud wedding ceremony environment, we had a very, very deep conversation, a heart-driven conversation. And then a couple of days ago, we exchanged text messages, and she said to me, "Where have you been all this time?" I started to think, these people like you do not exist. Something like that, she said to me. And I was like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's how I felt as well that's how I felt about her too. And in that moment, I just wanted to say, so okay, I just had not a deja vu, but I had a moment of, if a previous version of myself were to be here, she would be like, I'm sure we'll have a lifetime friendship. I'm sure she would want to commit for more. She would want to latch on that relationship, on that friendship, on that good feeling that she was feeling from that friendship. And then at that moment, I was like, I was filled with compassion toward that version of myself who was trying to find something to latch on that feels good and that feels at home. I sent her my compassion, but I was like, this is not your time. I'm not gonna suffocate this new friendship that is newly flourishing. We don't have to commit for anything other than this specific moment that we are sharing here right now. We don't have to commit for years. We don't have to commit for a week. We don't have to commit this thing to be a constant thing. Let's not suffocate this. So with that mindset, I replied to her. I said, I'm sharing the same feelings that you're sharing. I am excited. I've been excited for a very long time to meet people like you, where the people who look for deep relationships, deep conversations to hold, the people who create spaces for both of the sides to be seen, to be heard. And she was giving me that. She was going to give it more. But I was eager in that moment to ask for more. In that moment, like, I want to get it in that moment. So I just said to her, I'm just excited to deepen our friendship. But that was it. It was just a wish. It was just vocalizing my feelings. It wasn't asking for more. It wasn't suffocating to this pure, innocent, good thing that we are about to grow and nurture. And I don't know if this is a thing that comes with growing up and starting to see how naturally you go to different paths with different people in your life. But I recently experienced this with a person, a very, very deep, very, like, one of my very best friends now. I experienced with her as well. Our friendship is quite new compared to all the friendships that all the other friends I have in my life. But she is, from the very first moment, we have been having very deep conversations with her, like, without any extra effort. And it was very interesting because I haven't met anyone in years that understood me without me even speaking. Like, I was just like looking, and we met virtually. So it wasn't like in person. So I didn't even have to speak. And that made me lazy, to be honest, to search for more friendships, because I was getting comfortable in this friendship because I was understood without saying too much. But anyway, that's another topic. But what I was going to say about this friendship as well, I wanted consistency. I wanted longevity. I wanted to be a lifetime thing for me. I wanted commitment. And I said to her, I want you to be my lifelong friend or something like that, I said to her. And she said to me something, and I don't know what that was at that time, but I felt like, oh, maybe it's not a mutual thing. Maybe she doesn't feel the same way I feel about our friendship. Maybe she doesn't want this to be a lifetime thing. And then I realized in time that what I did there was out of fear of losing, fear of, oh, I may not be able to feel as authentic as I am right now with another person. Or I think it was a lot of different fears combined in that moment. In those moments in general where we tend to suffocate a good thing we have in our hands by asking for more. And since I realized what I asked from her and how I acted there, I'm feeling much more at ease in our friendship. I'm feeling much more, it feels like the taste, the joy of the moments that we share together have multiplied, because I'm not acting from a place of, oh, I might lose this. This moment cannot be repeated again. That internal drive has lessened in time. And now I'm welcoming a new friendship into my life where I'm very much aware of my tendency to suffocate a good thing by asking for more, asking for commitment. And I'm cautious about it. I'm mindful about it. So yeah, that was the last theme that I wanted to mention. And it's interesting because I know that it was going to be, all three of them are going to be somehow related. That's how I felt in the very first moment when I read the interview on Saturday and shared my ideas on Instagram. But I think the central theme for me in this conversation was the idea of home. As much as we feel at home within ourselves, home is ultimately you. We tend not to suffocate the good things we have in our hands. We tend to know our boundaries, when to be available, when to be reachable. And yeah, I think that is all. And I think I can draw more conclusions, but I'm not gonna draw more conclusions because I want a room for you to think and draw your own conclusions as well. I would love to hear what your take on it. Really, if you have my number, text me. And I really love connecting with this community, with the people that I know that they're listening. Or if you don't have my number, you can reach out to me on Instagram, Inner Dialogues with a Gem Instagram, or my personal Instagram, doesn't matter. But I really want to connect with you. I'll follow up with a Philos newsletter this week as well, with some further questions for us to reflect on and some personal take on these three themes that are quite loud and popular themes, I'm gonna say, in my life nowadays. So, as always, as our conversation for today fades away, may you find your echoes of it that resonate within you. And if you want to share your echoes, I'm here to listen to them always. Thanks for listening today. This is Inner Dialogues with Ecem, a place where you discover your inner you, a place where you belong. Take care.